My understanding from Marcy is that we're going to be discussing some issues that I've been exposed to around the country, just briefly in discussion, and then, and again, it's open to you to ask questions anywhere along the way, and then you will have continue on with a dialogue of your own later on this morning. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, okay. Well, I was going to start by just sharing with you, I just attended the McGraw-Hill Outlook, which I've been going to for literally decades, and I find it a great way to kind of kick off where kind of the economic forecasts are for the future. And some of the highlights of that, I've got notes, I'll kind of go through those bullet points that I think are good, because it looks at a global perspective and it looks at a national perspective, not necessarily on Seattle, but it does look at what's happening around the country, which has a way of carrying into a lot of different marketplaces. One of the gentlemen that kicked it off was Paul Scheer, S-H-E-A-R-D. He's the new chief global economist with Standard & Poor's. And actually he was quite positive with the current state of affairs, both on a global basis. Some of the things he feels we've come out of, and he's the first one I've heard actually admit this from an economist, that it was definitely the worst recession since the Great Depression of the late 29 and the 30s. He said it was really bad, and we have really climbed out of it. He said it's amazing how it has left an indelible imprint, but it's coming back. The euro has declined significantly and continues to decline, but China, all through that whole period, he said, even in the worst of it, was still bringing in about 8.5% a year GDP, which was amazing. He said they will just continue to grow as the market rebounds even further. They also see the potential pitfalls, and we all know this. We see it on the news every night. The geopolitical issues and China flexing its muscles, along with ISIS and the Cold War emergence, having Russia take a much stronger stance than they have in a sizable amount of time, could cause some problems. But he didn't see that as necessarily mega issues right now. He said in terms of the U.S., the federal policies were the exact right thing that we should have done. He said it was amazing that actually happened, and we did what was required. And it has really brought us back much faster in recovery than other parts of the world. The U.S. is currently has a growth and recovery of about 2.2%. That's about 8% above the pre-crisis levels in 2009. And he said unemployment currently is below 6% at about 5.9%. And a steady improvement across the board around the country on labor, which is good for all of us. And the housing recovery has been the one weak point, in large part because of the loan situation. But I personally I think it's bad because there was a lot of crazy loans that got us into the problem we fell into. But I know Fannie Mae is looking out here, and you'll hear more about this, of lowering their standards to let people get back into the housing, because the government would like to try to get that marketplace moving, which will be a little interesting from that standpoint. So I think we'll see what happens with that. And the monetary and the Federal Reserve continues to be positive, and they're slowly starting to ease off of the, they call it quantitative easing, and easing back off of that, of buying all these bonds that they've bought. Over $3 trillion worth over the last 4 or 5 years. Amazing amount of qualitative easing, as he kept saying. So interesting. The unemployment in the Eurozone, he feels, is also a concern. It's over 11%. And China, he sees going forward, will be over 10% growth going forward. And that's really a very hotbed of activity. Any questions before I move to the next piece of this? Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, I do have one question. Recently I read that Japan has just declared that they're going into a recession. Was there any discussion on that, or where the economy may be looking moving forward? given they're one of those great consumers?
He did not see that. He did not see that. He said he had heard them talking about that, but he said they are such a mega market, and he did not see that. He thought a 10% growth continuing on in the future.
Huh.
He did not see a recession there.
Thank you.
Now, not to say that they're not on the edge. They could have problems because they have built so much. I mean, they're building whole cities in a matter of 3 years. It's for 3 million people. He said it's amazing what they're doing, but they don't see it as being an issue at this point. Another piece of the discussions on this outlook was on the energy market, just a little bit on that, but tremendous opportunities in the energy market. We hear about it. The gentleman that spoke was a guy by the name of Bill Loveless, L-O-V-E-L-E-S-S, and he's with Branco Techzik, kind of an energy firm. He's been around for a while, but he said there's an enormous opportunity for expanded infrastructure development in all of these areas that are relatively undeveloped at this point. And to give you an idea of some of the numbers of this infrastructure, between 2014 and 2025, he sees just crude oil piping to be over $348 billion of opportunity. New rail lines needed around the country, $9 billion. Oil for development for individuals, over $560 billion. And more additional pipelines for other energy avenues, over $84 billion. And other auxiliary, yeah. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but other structures around this, over $178 billion. So again, getting into that market, I don't know, I can't give any words of wisdom there, but it looks like enormous opportunities will continue in the energy marketplace. He also said this Keystone Pipeline will get approval. He said it's just been more of a political statement than anything else, but it will move forward. He also made mention that by 2040, there'll be a 500% increase in solar and renewable energy sources around the country, and that will continue. And that was echoed later on, and we'll talk about that by another speaker too. And another thing that they see an enormous opportunity for people in today's marketplace are retrofitting existing buildings. And he gave an example of the Empire State Building was retrofitted with new energy sources for over $400 million. And that seems like a lot of money, but they said they would recover their investment within 40 months. I find that staggering when you think about it. So because of case studies like that, and as that word spreads, there'll be a lot of opportunities for retrofit of buildings around the country. Another key aspect of this talk and discussion was regarding industry trends. One of the things that was talked about was just BIM in particular, and we all know BIM is expanding and growing considerably. Just in the United States alone, and we lead the world, right now in 2013, 55% of the workforce was using BIM. By 2015, over 79% of the workforce in this country will be using BIM. The United Kingdom has just now made it mandatory that all public works projects will be using BIM going forward. And as those type of transitions and regulations come into play, I can't help but think it'll catch on in this country just as well. So a lot of interesting things there. Another good buzzword that's out there in today's marketplace that he sees as reshaping construction is this lean construction. And those of you who have heard of that. And I've been at several owner groups, and they really feel, the owner groups in particular, that they're leading this effort of pushing construction into lean construction. But AGC and other industry groups are adapting to it quickly and encouraging their folks to jump into it. And the benefits that owners see is higher quality construction, greater client satisfaction, improved safety, greater productivity, reduced project schedules, all great things. And one of the things that, and again, this is unsubstantiated, but contractors that they felt that had been using lean construction are seeing a 4 to 5% increase in their margins. So I don't know. That sounds very positive if it's true, but very interesting from that standpoint. There was also, just in terms of this was Harvey Bernstein with McGraw-Hill, talked about green construction. And as we know, green has become the new normal. But just to give you an idea of the magnitude of green construction, this year it will amount to about $171 billion of the marketplace will be green. By 2017, it will be $248 billion. And all the numbers and things I'm saying, I'm going to send to Marcy, so you'll all have copies of this. So, because I'm going through it relatively quickly, but you will all get copies of it too. And the last but not least, one of the things that Harvey mentioned that was of interest was we and SMPS was a part of the study with AIA and DBIA of looking at delivery systems and what do owners want going forward. And to give you an idea of coming out of this, and it was a SMART report that we have, and it's actually on our website, and it was given at the Bill Business for those of you who attended that session. It talked about the trends in delivery systems, which I think we as marketers and business developers have got to stay out ahead of. It talked about design build usage this year. Just to give you an idea, architects are seeing it as about 60% of the work they have. They see it actually, design bid build, dropping to about 6% by 2017. And contractors see it about 37% of their work now, dropping to about 31%. There is a growth projected for design build going from about 17% by architects to 20% in 2017, and contractors see it going from 25% to 30% in 2017. Another increase at CM at risk going from 14% for architects to 16% by 2017, and contractors from 24% edging up just a percent to 25%. So again, a little less design bid build and more design build and CM at risk going forward. And owners really are embracing this and moving it out there. Another interesting statistic he gave, which I found intriguing, we hear a lot about P3. And P3, I'll be honest with you, is growing. I hear a lot about that. We are a part of the P3 conference that takes place every year in Dallas. An unbelievable event in itself because when we first were invited to be a part of it, I really thought we would be one of the few people there. And there was over 1,000 people on the first conference they had. And on stage, they presented over $10 billion worth of work that was available for someone who could play the P3 game. And it's very interesting, and that just continues to grow as governments, especially the public sector, just doesn't have the funds to do the infrastructure and a lot of the repair that needs to be done, and the P3 movement is growing. But if you look at the entire construction market in this country, P3 really represents only about 3 or 4%. So it's a very small percentage at this point, but it continues to grow. And then the final part of the presentation, which I think we all love to say, is where is the market going? And what they did was looked at this year, and this year was a very strong market. Construction starts well, actually, there was a kind of a readjustment this year, but in 2013, construction starts were about 9% higher than the previous year. They dropped to about 5% this year for construction starts. Now, construction in place, differentials between 13 and 14 were about 6%. They see an overall construction growth for 2015 of about 9%. Now, that 9% is heavily focused on, and it's interesting, commercial construction is coming back, institutional and mainly higher education is coming back, and multifamily continues at a strong front around the country. So they see that as continuing. In terms of the top 10 markets for the multifamily, and this is where Seattle is in the top 10, you've got New York as number 1, Washington, D.C. is number 2, Miami, L.A., San Francisco, Dallas, Boston, Houston, Seattle, and Denver. So those are the leading markets for multifamily. They don't see that tapering off and will continue to grow. And their owners are being encouraged to invest in that. It's a good return on investment. So they're really putting a lot of money into that at this point. And there seems to be the funding for those multifamily projects going forward, which is intriguing too. Healthcare is currently, this year, is a decline of about 7%, is how they see ending the year, but they see an uptick next year of about 2.4%. And again, that whole marketplace, as those of you who know are in it, is really adjusting to the new healthcare laws, and that still hasn't necessarily sorted itself out yet, but it's definitely changing the playing field to smaller facilities, clinics around the country, which is changing that big growth that we had been a part of for many years. Any questions at this point? That's everything I had on that outlook, just to kind of share that with you. None? Okay. Okay. And I can talk forever, so please shut me up when you guys have a question, please. On the international, I was only going to talk about a couple of meetings I had recently that maybe are of interest that you guys could play off of. And again, I'll send you the names on these. But we were involved with the Detroit chapter, did a panel discussion on the automotive industry. And I really had anticipated, I didn't really see it as booming and kind of relatively maintaining status quo or stagnant, and was kind of intrigued and interested. I was facilitating the panel, got to spend time the night before with the panelists, and it was interesting how encouraged they were in terms of the future they see for the auto industry. They all said they have never been as busy as they are now in terms of work and volume, and most of that work is not in this country. It's actually in other parts of the world. But one of the intriguing parts coming out of that discussion is they are not going over there without U.S. firms. They really are working with local firms, and I'll send you the names of these contacts. If you're interested, and if you're involved in manufacturing or any of that aspect of the automotive industry, I think there's enormous opportunities to play a role in that. They just see that continuing to grow and expand in their market arena. I also found it interesting that the three people that were involved in the planning and execution at the auto industries were very open to hearing and talking to business developers. They said that now they set up times. There was a lady, Mary Kay Scott, who's with General Motors, who said she's busy during the day, but at 4 o'clock apparently there's a lake around their facility that she said, I encourage people to come by at 4. I go for a walk every day, and I take people with me, and they can talk to me as we're walking about their ideas and suggestions, and I meet with a lot of people that way. So I found that intriguing. Also, the gentleman from Ford, Roger Gaudet, said enormous opportunities for Ford. It's been extremely profitable for them, both domestically and internationally, and they see a lot of expansion. A firm that is doing a lot of the automotive work is called Walbridge Construction, and most of their work, probably close to 80%, is international, which I've known them for years, but did not realize that. Rick Haller is their, H-A-L-L-E-R, is their COO and president, who actually spoke and said they're really looking for partners, especially in design and engineering, to help with projects they're doing around the world, because they're really end up in interesting markets. And again, and they were able to manage that that world of being pulled into it, and it seems they would be a good one to maybe partner with to learn more about it yourself if you're interested in getting into that. It would be very positive. And again, I'll send you the names and contacts from these, and it could be a good opportunity. We've also been calling on people all over the country with principals, close to about maybe 50 to 75 a year. And those people that we've been calling on, besides talking about marketing, and I'll talk about that a little later in terms of some of the changes in the workforce, but are also talking about the international growth within their firms. And it's more domestic firms taking them internationally. I did not meet with any that were actually over there actually looking for work, but their clients are taking them over there, and it is becoming, again, somewhat of a safe market to participate in from what it has been. If you handpick your countries to go into, and you're with someone that you can trust and will help you get paid. But I look at HDR, who said they've gone from about 8 to 9% in the architectural division internationally to over 30% now, which was quite interesting when you look at the changes taking place there. So that's basically all I had on international. Barbara Shook and I were just at the ASCE Global Conference. Just to touch on that real briefly, met with several firms. There were U.S. firms and international firms. The challenge they have, which I found intriguing, and again, maybe an opportunity, is they cannot get people from this country to go overseas for assignments. There is a real hesitancy, in large part because most families today have 2 incomes, and it's tough to just have a spouse give up their career and follow you to another country, and children too. It's a different world for families altogether, but an enormous opportunity. I must have heard that at least 24 times while we were at this conference, how they are really looking for people that are willing to go on international assignments, both from the technical and the non-technical side, and some great opportunities there going forward. So, we as an organization are just starting to get our feet wet, learning the international marketplace. We have an international task force now that is doing some study from different people around the country. And I think once we kind of have a better feel ourselves, and Barbara, who actually has her master's degree from Thunderbird University, which is an international marketing school, will really help kind of guide that process. And I think we'll see more on that. Any questions, comments? Okay. A little talking about millennials in the workforce and what it means for each of us. Needless to say, millennials are coming in, and we're seeing millennials, as we all know, they have been raised and cultivated with technology their entire lives. So they are adapting to a whole different way of marketing and business development, and in the technical side, the same thing. Very different outlook on business and opportunities. We have been a part of several training groups for young architects and engineers, just talking to them about marketing and business development. I am amazed at how they want to learn more about what you and I do for a living and how much they want to partner with you, whereas people maybe we're all conditioned to working with didn't necessarily embrace us like we thought they should or could. The young millennials do. So they realize that they are a marketing commodity within the firms they work for and want to get better at that. At the same time, there's a very entrepreneurial spirit with them that I have not experienced. It's very strong entrepreneurial feeling where they really want their own companies in time. And I think within your own firms, and I think as we see around the country, there's a great opportunity with millennials in particular, blending the marketing and business development activities as never before. And this is with the technical millennials in particular. We're also seeing, I had a great meeting with Stantec and some of their organizations, and with one of their organizations where they're trying to get their technical people out into the field, and this ties into the next question, the next item also, but it was, and it's really tough. They were talking about just 5 or 6 hours a week. That's all they were looking for. And it was major for people that had been there for 25, 30 years to even spend 5 or 6 hours a week, non-billable hours, cultivating client relationships. And they were very hesitant to work with the marketing or the business development teams, and their principals in the middle of this room with them on one side and the marketing and BDs on the other, and saying it's like two different companies. They just don't communicate, and yet they could really help each other much more. So from the standpoint of the Xers and the Boomers, maybe not as receptive from the technical side of working with marketers and business developers, whereas the Millennials, there was a young lady that was a millennial who embraced the marketing and business development department and was like leading the charge within the Stantec organization, which I found quite interesting. And last but not least, on the owner dynamics, tying into that, owners are, and I believe you've all had the discussion that was done through the foundation book, the AEC Business Development, The Decade Ahead, if I'm correct. You've had that seminar within your chapter. But that book really goes into, and it's gotten a lot of discussion around the country, but it's echoed at every group I'm with. There is a definite change in the marketplace for what owners want in the future. And it's not the death knell for marketing and BD and business development. It's just a modification of what we've been doing to assist a different owner group that's out there. In large part, during the recession, a lot of the owners picked up the architects and engineers who were let go from the firms. So really your owner group, in large part, are those technical people that were within your firms that are now in owner organizations, which has been an interesting transition. The other side of that is they really want, because it's a major risk on these projects and they can lose their jobs, they really want to meet the people that they're going to be dealing with. So there is a real push to get the people that come in and do the presentations, the people that meet with them, the people that are going to, the individuals and professionals that are actually going to be on the jobs, not the business developers. So there's been a shift in that standpoint. At the same time, those billable people or the seller doers aren't necessarily receptive and have the skill sets to really do this. So firms are really trying to find a way to restructure their marketing departments and their business development departments to align and work accordingly with those new rules. Now, that is also meaning some business development staffs are being cut down so that they can push more seller doers into that position, which is a transition. At the same time, every owner group, every principal I've met said that they realized that the skill sets were always much stronger with the non-technical business developers, but they're hoping that the others can help train the seller doers because they have got to do that moving forward. So this transition is just going to continue to grow as we go forward. But I am seeing firms around the country start to adjust to this. Marketing organizations, marketing departments in particular, they're the ones that are really being aggressive and proactive are restructuring their marketing departments to being 50% proposal-driven and 50% business development-driven. And by that I mean they're setting up the appointments, they're doing the research on the clients and the projects, they're doing the debriefs on after if a project is not successful, they're doing the presentation skills and helping set up the presentations for the principals going into the meetings. There's a major shift in the marketing, and the marketing departments I've met with where this has taken place has been very positive because they find their lives are now not driven by proposals consistently, but it is very much more exciting, and they're integrally part with the organization. So I think that has been a very positive move all around. And I think we as an organization are working with our foundation right now. There'll be a marketing research study that should be started by the early part of the year with an end result of what are some of the best practices of some of those seller doers organizations out there that are integrating the marketing and business development department, and what can you do to really fine-tune your organization to meet that new change in the marketplace. I've talked enough. Please ask any questions if you have any, or any questions or concerns or observations.
I do have one question just based on what you just said about the marketing team getting divided between research and proposal writing. And was there any indication on whether or not those teams are actually growing too? Are they adding more staff across the board, or are we still staying lean and mean?
They're still saying lean and mean. I don't see them growing. But I do see them not doing as many proposals, which they are focusing more on the go, no go, and not going after everything that's out there, which is finally starting to take shape around the country.
One of the things that I'm seeing out here, my firm handles both private and public with almost an even split, is that the private's always been going electronic, and so your electronic media has to be just that much sharper, and it's that much more visual, and it's less words on the page, where the public's starting to catch on to that, and that's creating a new dynamic in how we do our jobs. Was there any conversation or discussion about how people are readjusting, given that we're still lean and mean, but we're still just as competitive as before?
Well, it's extremely competitive. I really had thought with the most recessions, to be honest with you, sends out the competition. This recession didn't, and which is I don't know how to explain it, but it didn't. It actually has stayed intact. So it's a very aggressive, ambitious marketplace out there, and continues to be that way. Also, this technology, which has been, if you think about it, it's only in the last 3 to 5 years that it has really taken off. And owners today, one of the things I'm hearing, which I find intriguing also, is they're saying, don't call us, we'll call you. They're doing their research online on firms, and they're really pre-qualifying them based on what they're seeing on your website. So that's frightening. If you think that you haven't adjusted your website in maybe 3 to 5 years, and a lot of firms really built websites not so much for clients, but more so for employee growth and pulling people in for recruitment. So owners today are using that internet site and your websites to do a lot of research prior to those meetings themselves. And they're also saying the last thing they want is to have someone make a call on them. They don't want cold calls, and they don't want someone coming into these meetings, these presentations, without having done the research on them. There's no reason that we can't be as knowledgeable as they are about us as we are about them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that whole dynamic of the internet is creating another skill set that's needed, even in addition to everything else that you're doing. So the job is getting more complex and more demanding, but I also think maybe more interesting in some aspects, rather than just being a proposal mill, which has been, I hear that a lot in the industry, but I don't hear that anymore. I still hear it, but I also hear there's the new trends that are out there really helping reshape this into something much more exciting and much more where there's a sense of satisfaction because the tasks are varied throughout the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. And is Marcy there?
I am. Hi, Ron.
Hi.
Sorry I'm late.
Okay, no. Is there anything else you would like? That's pretty much everything I had at this point.
Did any of you have more questions for Ron?
That's a lot of information.
Say what?
That was a lot of information.
There was a lot of information? Yeah. Yeah, Ron has a tendency to cram every minute.
Yeah, I did. And I will send you all of these, and there's like 50 pages of these economic things, but I'll send you, because it'll help you kind of back in your own firm, sit down and analyze it. I'll send everything to you right now, Marcy, if you'd like, and you can probably make copies while everybody's there.
Great. Thank you very much.
I have one more question, Ron.
Oh, anything?
Sorry. One more, sorry.
Yeah.
We've seen the Fed decrease their spending pretty drastically, pretty quick. I've been talking to other folks out in the industry, and they're saying, well, when the private comes back, the Fed spending starts to come back in about a 3 to 5 year lag. In your experience, because you have a little bit more experience than some of us in the room, is that a true gauge, or is that somebody pulling something out of their hat?
Yes. Well, the problem right now is there's a stalemate at it's really a logjam in the legislative end, as you read in the news every day, where nothing's going through. But I do see, at the same time, the government is a mega organization, and it's still going to pump a lot of money back into the private sector, I just see that happening, or the public sector. Now, part of the problem is not the federal government as much as it is the states are really suffering. Those of you who do work in California, the debt there continues to be a big issue. And the government debt actually has shrunk considerably, which is just because of the taxes and the money coming in from the taxes and this energy. The money coming in off taxing the energy projects out there has brought a lot of money back into the government to doing things that it didn't have before. But the government doesn't have the ability to kind of sit down and negotiate and pass these bills to move money into infrastructure. I mean, to get past a highway bill, it's amazing how we're basically going to run out of money in 9 months, and they still don't have any answers, and they say it's a major crisis, but they don't have a solution. So this is why they're looking at P3. But P3, those who have been involved with it, it takes years to get those P3 projects off the ground. And they're not a panacea of funding either. They're another whole different aspect of these projects. So typically, as the private goes up, the public goes down, and they kind of counterbalance each other. Even the public during the recession helped carry most of the industry, because the private was almost null and void during that whole period. So, but I just, everything I'm hearing, if the politicians can start agreeing, they really want to start pushing more money into public works projects, because they understand that's a great way to get people employed, and it's a great way to pump money into economies all over the country. So we could very well see in the next year, if they can find a way to work together, a positive market for both the public and the private for at least for the next 3 years, which would be fantastic for our industry. And I think that's what I'm hearing as a real possibility that's coming down the pike.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for letting me talk. You've got my email there. If you have other questions, please just send them to me. We're involved in lots of different groups and things, and I may not have an answer, but I can put you in touch with the people that will. And it's an exciting time for our industry. It's an exciting time for the association. We're growing and really investing in the future, in your future right now ourselves, because we're trying to build the next generation from the content development of the domains of practice, the body of knowledge. At the same time, develop learning management systems that are online, because everybody works such god-awful hours anymore. It's hard to get things done during the day. I admire you guys coming in at 7:30, your time. But this online learning will kick off here within the next 60 days at the latest. And I think it's the start of a whole different way of offering programming and educational venues to you that you can participate in 24 hours a day, which I think would 24 hours a day, which I think would be very positive. At the same time, as you start doing some of these, and we need to hear from you. What do you want? We can do anything, but we really want to do what you want. So, and maybe something just on trends. I was actually at the Dell Tech Insight conference last week and spent time with the. They've acquired a new federal government group that monitors all of the trends in the public sector, and an enormous resource, I think, for us of getting ongoing data statistics on a regular basis and running it through the marketer and running it through webinars. And we really want to start tapping into that. I met with them down there, and nice people. We're looking for people to work with like us, and I think there's a great opportunity there to share that information with you and with your firm. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. So that's in the works now, and that's coming. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ron. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.